Hey, this is Professor Homa. Welcome to JavaScript using the date object. We'll be using the date object because there's lots of different things we can use with the date object. We can pull things from it, we can create strings, we can use variables, all kinds of things from something very simple like the date object. And just to take a look at the date object, here's W3 Schools. I'm just going to go to the JavaScript section. And when I get here, and they even have a date and time thing here, but I'm going to go down to dates and go to JS dates. And the first thing they show is displaying dates, and we're going to be doing something like this, and I have a sample like this already. But if you use to try it yourself, if you click on here, you can see what they're doing. They basically have a little paragraph with an ID of demo where they're actually going to display this date thing. And it's already done, so there's nothing to do here. There's no button to click. We'll be using buttons to kind of make it display. But what they're doing here inside the JavaScript is using this document.getElementById and telling the demo ID to use inner HTML to show the date object. And when we create a date object, we're going to use new date, but here they're just using the date object, and that's all it does. But that's really generic and plain looking and hard to read. Just looks like a computer generated thing. But what we're going to do is we're going to try and pull different parts from this. We're going to try to pull the day, the week, the year, put it in different formats so it doesn't look so generic like it is here. Now if you go and look at the sample, I have a sample here called date object sample, and this one's a little different because we use a variable, and all it does, instead of having the date here, we create a variable for the date. That's just we're using D. I'm just using D because W3 Schools is using D, and I'm using the new date because they say they use a new date constructor. If you go to W3 Schools, where I just was, and they say when creating date objects, use the new date constructor, even though it'll actually work without doing that. I'm going to try and do that. So I'm creating the new date object here by var d. So my variable is named d. So then when I do my document.getElementById demo, I just have to put d in there. And using these variables is going to make creating strings a little bit easier, because then we don't have all these characters and parentheses and have to worry about all that. Especially when we have to put quotes in and plus signs, it's going to be a lot harder. So you could even try that when you get to, you could even go back here and use this, try it yourself. Even if you went in here and tried it and you said, okay, let's put D in here. Well, actually, you should always put the variable first and make sure it's inside your script. So I'm gonna do it in here, right in the W3 Schools, and I'm gonna do var D equals, and I'm gonna do the new, and I'll do the date object. And remember, date has a capital D in it, and I'll use a semicolon. And then here I'll just put D, and that's all I should need. And it's just substituting D for the date object, but it is inside the script. So if I do see result, it does the same thing. So we know that works. Okay, one thing I just wanted to point out here with using this D too is that we can also put it in a string. So if I wanted to say today is the date or whatever, I could put today is, and I could put that string in quotes. So I'm going to put that in quotes. And I'll even I'll include my space in there in the quotes. And then what I have to do, if I'm using a variable here, that var d, if I'm including that, if I'm concatenating it with the string, I'm going to use a plus sign. So I'm going to use plus there to finish that off. And what should happen is it should say today is, and then it should do this. And there it does. Today is, and then it's showing that date object. And we're going to be doing a lot of this. We're going to be concatenating the strings in here so we can actually write actual sentences instead of just all this blurb of numbers that's here. So just remember, we're going to do this, and that's why using variables is a little easier to concatenate. And now we're going to go and we're going to start the other one from scratch. Okay, so we're done with that. What we're going to do next, and here's another sample. This is called date weekday. Now if I go in this date weekday, you'll see all this code here, and we won't do it. We might try it different ways. But what I want to do here, and I'll preview it, and I'll preview it again just to show what's going to happen here. This date weekday, what we want to do is we want to click on here and have today is Tuesday, if today's Tuesday, and it is. Today's Tuesday, February 10th, and we just want to say today is Tuesday. We're going to pull that by using a getDay method. There's all kinds of methods that we're going to be able to pull from the date object that we'll be able to get some information and do whatever we want with it. We could do all kinds of things with it. Okay, so that's one of the things we're going to do, and there's a sample here, but I'm going to go through this kind of from scratch so we see how to set this up. Another place to go back to W3 Schools, I'll close up my little try it editors here, And also, if you go to the date methods, you'll see the different date methods that we're going to use. The first couple we're going to use is going to be the getDate, getDay. That's the one I'm using for the one that's going to display Tuesday. And notice that the number for days are 0 through 6, meaning 0 is Sunday, the numbers start with 0. So 0 is Sunday, 1 is Monday, 2 is Tuesday. So we're going to be pulling out a 2 to get a Tuesday from that. So we're going to have to do a little conversion. We'll also be working with the full year. We'll also be working down here with the month. And the month also goes 0 through 11. There's 12 total, but 0 is going to be January. So we just have to remember that. And we're not going to work with the time now. We'll work with the time later. We'll just focus on date methods right now. So what we're going to do next is we're going to actually go to the one that says date weekday start, and we're actually just going to go through and start building this, building the function inside here and just display it so it displays Tuesday.